I didn't like Frozen 2, that it was a disappointment. But I would say there's a song in Frozen 2 about the next right step. And there also, I think about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. There's a moment where Indy has to walk out on Counter Bridge one step at a time. And I think that's really key. It's you're just constantly trying to do what's the next right thing to do. I've got to say, before it starts, I was really pleased with the cats you doodled today on the quiz. So I was looking at that right before I left my office. So I think the first cat you drew was best, but this one would be second best compared to...
Welcome to the Life on Shuffle podcast, a collection of stories about people who have taken chances, embraced the unexpected, and inadvertently discovered their true passion. Today we are featuring Matt Williams, an English instructor from Hudson, North Carolina. I am Alexis, your host. We are also joined by Raylen, Sierra, Yarecsi, and Cooper. Matt Williams is an astounding and well-loved English instructor in Caldwell County. He loves Disney, comics, writing, and helping students grow. He didn't originally want to become an English instructor, but wanted to become a cartoonist or an animator due to his love for films and comics. Welcome to the show, Mr. Williams.
Thank you so much.
We wanted to start the show today with CCCNTI's only Yelp review. Attention all new students taking English. Mr. Matt Williams is the only reason the school gets 5 stars. Yeah, they're great with helping you get started. However, Mr. Williams in the English department is the best instructor I've ever had. He is the only reason why I haven't given up this semester. How does that make you feel, Mr. Williams?
Humbled. That was really sweet. I have. I know someone brought it to my attention when that was posted.
Oh, really?
And I was pretty sure it was anonymous, the person that left it. And it was a very sweet comment. And yeah, I was very humbled and felt unworthy. So
Unworthy?
Yeah.
Why?
It's really high praise. And the best thing I can tell you honestly about working at the college is that I'm surrounded by good people, that I really feel like everybody there wants to create a positive experience for the students, and especially since both of my kids came through the early college and the college,
Right.
and I saw how good the folks there were to my own children. I don't feel worthy to be singled out. There are plenty of good reasons to. There are plenty of good people there that.
How should I say this? I think you're worthy enough. Like,
Well,
I don't.
thank you.
Well, you shouldn't feel unworthy, okay?
Thank
Don't
you.
feel unworthy. What is your goal as a teacher?
To meet each student where they're at and to prepare them for future challenges, and to help folks find their voice and hopefully pick up some skills that will be helpful for where they go next after my class.
Yeah, so did you always want to be a teacher? Like, is it something you pursued?
No, it would have been horrifying to me when I was really, even at the point I was a senior in high school. It would have been horrifying, the idea that I would be a teacher, that I really I didn't like school, particularly for most of the way through. I loved college. College was great. There were things I liked about school. I did pretty well academically, and I had friends, but the idea of being a teacher, I've always been more introverted, and the idea of getting in front of a room of people and talking every day, that would have been terrifying to me when I was in school.
Gotcha. So I guess growing up, what did you want to be? Like, what was a career path you wanted to pursue?
When I was really young, I thought about being a zookeeper, but probably sometime around middle school, I wasn't that science focused, So yeah, that was a childish thing. But at some point, probably around 5th or 6th grade, and really through my senior year, I thought the idea of being a comic book artist, or being a writer in some way, or an animator, that kind of switched between those things in my head. And I did all throughout. When I was younger, I would write my own stories and I'd make my own comic books, and I drew a lot. I probably haven't, for the most part, I haven't drawn in the last 20 years. There's a friend who brings her granddaughter to church, and she has one of those little pads that you kind of draw on it, and then you can press the little button, it goes away. Sometimes on Sunday mornings, I'll draw little things for her, and I'll think about, I haven't drawn since I was 18, and it's kind of a neat feeling. But for the most part, that's just something I haven't done, but I used to really love to do when I was younger. So,
Is there like a certain comic book you like, or is it because you said that you wrote a lot of your own comic books? Was there something, like, did you have a specific theme that you were going for in those comic books, or was it just kind of like you thought of it and kind of went with it?
When I was drawing my own comics, they were my own characters, but probably most of it was pretty derivative of what I was reading and watching, that I think I was always kind of more interested in kind of the sitcom-y, kind of funny animal kind of thing, that I liked superhero comics, but most of what I was doing was more kind of goofy sitcom kind of in nature, and kind of inspired by, I don't know, definitely as a kid I was watching like DuckTales and Animaniacs and Looney Tunes and that kind of thing, and the stuff that I was drawing was more like that, but not particularly well drawn or particularly well plotted. So
Gotcha.
So what made your career path want to switch from being an animator to just randomly going into an instructor?
I really felt like I took 4 years of art in high school, and my art teacher was super kind to me, and I really liked her. But and I don't know if this is necessarily a good thing to say, because I don't know if I necessarily drew. I think a lot about, you tell kids that do anything you want to do, you can make it happen, and I don't know. I was very aware that there were people in the class that were so much better than me. And I don't know, y'all probably never heard of Miami Vice, have you?
No.
It was like a show that was super popular in the 80s. And in art, we had to pick out, they had old magazines. And the magazine I picked was one of the characters from Miami Vice. And, part of what we were doing, the teacher's trying to get us to draw from life. And we spent over a month drawing that. Mine was terrible. And every day when I had to come into art and they took that out and I had to add more to it, that the person I was drawing didn't look human. But there was a girl at my table named Stacy Westbrook that had picked out a picture of a senior citizen. And I remember Stacy was drawing the little crow's feet at the edge of the woman's eyes. And I just thought, and Stacy is a professional artist now, that she's on Facebook, and I know she'll post pictures. I know part of what she does, she paints the rocks at outside of schools, but she'll do other stuff too for local businesses. And she, a few years ago we went to a street festival, and she drew a character of my son. That Stacy made a go of it as an artist, and I felt like every day when I was doing more to that drawing, there was not a future in art for me. And I read a lot of books about Disney animation and just about the history of movies, and I enjoyed the process of reading that and gaining that knowledge. But it slowly became clear to me that good animators, good cartoonists, weren't just drawing funny cartoon characters. You had to have actual talent where you could draw the muscles, and just all these little details and the little bits of shading. So
since you became an English instructor, what made you want to do a college level?
Honestly, okay. So, I hold back in the whole long story. I thought when I finally got to college, I thought that I'd major something writing related, because I'd received a lot of praise on my writing. I always felt like my art was kind of terrible, but my writing I felt good about. And it kind of became clear to me, and I know, again, I'm a little hesitant to say this, I don't know the clearest career path if you major in English is to teach it. And I kind of did that because I was thinking short term that I'll take all these English classes and I'll do well on them. But then, at the end of 4 years, I have to do student teaching. And it's like student teaching, I really liked the students. I didn't like the whole high school schedule. I mean, I think one thing that's brutal about high school is, I don't know, like, okay, teaching at the college, there are times I get to go back in my office and close the door, but it's like as a high school teacher, you're always on in front, that you can't hide under your desk occasionally,
Yes.
And I don't know, student teaching felt intimidating, that I really liked all those students. That was something that I didn't expect, just how much I cared about them and I was interested in them, but I didn't like the always being on aspect of it. And I guess too, I have a lot of sympathy for younger teachers, that it feels weirder when you're young and you're facing students that aren't that much younger than you. That doesn't feel so weird. Like being 48, it doesn't feel as intimidating to talk to folks as it did right when I was fresh out of school, And I guess that's partly, I don't know. I taught high school for a year after college because I couldn't find after I got my master's degree, I taught high school for a year before I was able to get a job teaching at college. And at that point I had taught when I was in grad school, and I tried to that year I didn't really do that great a job. I was trying to relate to the high school students like I tried to relate to my college students. And I remember I had a class, these were students that were ninth graders that were really struggling. They had failed the 8th grade exit exam. And I basically went in there like I had the college students that I taught when I was in grad school. And I told them, just write anything you feel. It's your truth, I'm not going to censor it. And there was a kid that wrote this thing like, I hate Matt Williams. I hate his stupid glasses. I would like to break his stupid spine and stab him with it. And, I thought, this teaching high school is a different thing than teaching college students. That I guess what I like about teaching college students is I did learn there's distance that, and even with college, there's a certain amount but it was hard. It felt so natural just to ask them, well, express yourself. But the idea like, well, I need to talk to them about not making threats towards me, that's uncomfortable.
That was horrible.
He laughed when the planes hit the Twin Towers, too.
What?
And I know this is wrong to say, and he's probably grown up to be an upstanding citizen. I haven't seen him in over 20 years, but that was the semester that September 11th happened. And when the principal comes over the intercom to say, well, there are 2 planes that have hit the Twin Towers. There's a 4th plane we don't know about. One's hit the Pentagon. That kid laughed. And that was an odd time, and I don't want to sit in judgment of him 20 years later. But I'll never forget that. Hopefully he's okay.
That's crazy.
That is very crazy.
I would ask you how you feel, but how you felt at that time. But it's just revisiting that moment it's just crazy. I do have a different question though. You did say in your response of the email that you thought that teaching high schoolers was horrible, and I kind of agree when I see your point of view, revisiting that memory. But do you still think teaching high schoolers is terrible?
As I'm talking to one of my dual enrolled students, so
you can be completely honest.
It's a lot easier. Again, being the age that I am now, it feels more natural. I think the maturity that it was harder when I was younger. And I think, too, again, just being honest, I don't want to be dark, that one thing that was really hard for me that year when I was I got my graduate degree, I taught high school for a year, there were several kids that the veteran teachers told me the kid that wrote the threatening journal,
Yes.
that I was told, well, he's a few months away from his 16th birthday party. Just try not to poke at him too much. And, I remember there was a kid that in my fourth period that he just lay his head down on his desk every day. And, I'd try to, get him perk up involved
Yeah.
a little bit. But I had a lot of students that, one thing, I think this is probably still true. It was definitely true 20 years ago that if you were a new teacher and you didn't have a lot of experience, they gave the students that really needed a good teacher to you. And I really felt like I don't feel like I did. I don't know what I would have done otherwise, but I would have liked to have been a better teacher for those kids. I think one thing that I'm very aware of is that ironically, I'm teaching a lot of dual enrolled high school. Most of my students these days are dual enrolled high school students, but these are students that have decided to pursue a college education. So they generally, and even my traditional population, most of my students now kind of sort of want to be there, whereas definitely when I was teaching high school, some of those kids were there just because they had to. And I didn't know how to reach them and to
Right.
be as good a teacher as I wish I had been for them.
You're still a great teacher now.
Well, thank you.
You're a great instructor.
I appreciate that.
Do you prefer teaching like adults or prefer teaching the teenagers, like around our age, basically?
It's all so different, and I like both. It was when I first started here. I've been here 22 or 23 years now. I had a lot of students that were older than me. That a lot of my first years here were there were a lot of people that they lost their jobs in the furniture factories, and they were in my classes, and they were so kind to me that I felt like a little kid. That a lot of these people, I was still in my late 20s, and a lot of my students were like in their 40s or 50s, and they were really kind to me, and the stories they told were really interesting. They wrote about they wrote about marriages falling apart. They wrote about losing their homes or challenges they'd faced in their families. The kinds of things that the older students wrote about were really interesting. But I don't know, the things my younger students write about are really interesting too. I think what I like most about what I do is you get little glimpses into people's lives and their experiences and how they see things. And there are special things. I miss that I don't get to teach as many older students as I used to, but I still really like the traditional population. I still really like my dual enrolled folks too.
So you're a little nosy, I see. You did say that you're a bit awkward and introverted. So how did you
Absolutely. Yeah.
how did you gain confidence within yourself?
It's still, that honestly there are moments that it's like standing up there, I feel a wave of self-consciousness, and it's like that never has gone away entirely. But I have a really vivid memory. Like when we come back to school in August, they have what they call employee kickoff, and they have little refreshment. It's at the Civic Center. We have refreshments out in kind of the main part of the Civic Center, and then you have to decide who you're going to sit with. And I had this realization that all these people are people that did well in school but were a little awkward, and they all decided to become teachers. And it just struck me like, I'm no more awkward than they are, It just kind of running with that, and I do feel blessed to be in a position that there are a lot of people that come into classes. A lot of my students, they're scared to be there and they're uncomfortable. And I think just realizing that the awkwardness and the anxiousness I feel is something that a lot of people do. And if you can acknowledge you're not the only one. And I think too, think about a book I read years ago that was like a biography of Charles Schulz, like who created like Charlie Brown. And on one hand, I relate a lot to Charlie Brown. But part of the book, one thing I emphasize, and this, I don't want to ruin Charlie Brown, but on one hand, Charlie Brown's pitiful, but Charlie Brown is so self-involved. You know what I mean? I think one thing about feeling anxious and self-conscious is you almost inflate your own importance in your head. And I think if you remind yourself that I'm not that important, people aren't necessarily studying the stupid things that I said later. That feels big to me. That's not necessarily other people have their own problems rather than thinking about the awkwardness of Matt Williams that day. So that helps.
What would you say, like, that a lot of students say that, like, inspire them to become teachers? Because you mentioned earlier how, like, them being in your class makes them kind of want to pursue teaching. Like, what inspires them that maybe, like, you do or they see you do that could potentially inspire them?
I don't know that I do anything, you know. I do. I think, I'm going to think about that just a moment.
I think you do, and I think you're not noticing something that we all notice, in that the inspiration maybe doesn't have to come from like a academic sense. Maybe we have looked where we saw the Yelp review, and then we looked at the Rate My Professors like page, and it is just 5 stars, like glowing things about you as a teacher, but also like as a person. So I don't know, I would, if I was going to answer it for you, and then you can elaborate on this, that the inspiration that you probably provide for your students is like what you started out by saying, meeting people where they're at and being kind and being the somebody that somebody can turn to, or you know, is comfortable being around, stuff like that all of these former students have publicly posted online for you. Like,
I guess what I'd say is being just honest that I don't necessarily, I was a first generation college student, and I remember being in grad school and feeling like that these kids had a lot more background and experience. Their parents were doctors and lawyers, and I did feel out of place, like I didn't fit. And I do remember like going to see, I've always really liked movies, and we would go see like important movies with messages together, and the things they would say afterwards, I thought that felt intimidating, to go to see the movies with English grad students that, you know, shared all their big thoughts afterwards. And I guess it hit me in grad school, I don't think I can outsmart other teachers. You know, I don't feel like I'm a genius scholar. And I think, too, I definitely know other teachers that are so creative and come up with so many good ideas. And I think that's an important part of teaching. But I think what I really want to be is I do want to be authentic and open to my students, you know. And I don't know, it was a shock to me, like early on, to realize that it's still being in the position. Some people find you scary, you know what I mean? And really, too, it takes an adjustment to when people start calling you like Mr. You know, that feels weird, you know. But I feel like what I try to do, what I hope to be as a teacher, is like approachable, and that I am somebody that I'm willing to help, so, and willing to listen.
You've achieved that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
what's in your own personal life, what's a interaction that you have with somebody where you value that same thing, the authenticness, and you know, you when you walk in, walking into what is an uncomfortable situation for you, and you hope that that person is going to provide, you know, that level of comfort in whatever you're doing.
I think I know what you mean, but tell me.
I was just thinking, like, a lot of people get nervous going to a doctor. So
100%. Yeah.
like, that those same traits that you were saying you hope to provide to your students, like, would be, is that something that you value when you go to the doctor or the driver's license office, or
I definitely, one thing that I credit to my wife, just, we started dating in 95, we got married in 99, but one thing that she always does, and I think I picked up, whenever we go anywhere, she'll ask questions of the people there, kind of like, what's it like working here? What kind of things you do? What kind of customers do you get frustrated by? And I don't know, I do tend to be chattery. Like if I go to, like when I got my haircut this past week, going to a restaurant, just I am fascinated by people's different experiences and how they frame things. And I think that's something, even the jobs that I had in college and high school, it's just the consciousness that people have when you're in that business. A lot of times that's not fair or reasonable. It's not representative. Like, you sink into that reality of that place there, and you think about that's the truth, and you can get into a vibe. Like, I worked in a movie theater, and I was fascinated by how much other people I worked with hated the customers, and there was a lot of conversation about how stupid the customers were. And one thing they always talked about is when the customer would come up to the candy counter, they'd say, how much is everything? And, a lot of my coworkers, like, there's the sign, they'd point to it. And on one hand, there's part of me that felt like, okay, people, just read the sign. I don't want to talk to you. But I really think it is disorienting when you go into a new place. I think about when I teach, in a way, I've been taking English 111 for over 20 years now. If I'm not careful, I can think about, everybody knows that, but for my students, it's this constant new experience that I guess I'm interested in the atmosphere that we're all in our little, our little boxes, but you always have to be conscious that not to let that close your own awareness and thinking and how you judge other people.
Since you inspire other students, who inspired you to maybe do instructing or become an animator?
I had great teachers in school, and that's part of it. That I had a U.S. history teacher my junior year that we watched a movie called Little Big Man, and I had to write an essay taking what we had talked about the American West and apply it to that movie. And Miss Mylan, after we had turned in the essay, she comes in and says, your essays were all terrible. You all did such a lousy job. There's only one essay that was worth anything, and I'm going to read it to you now. And she read my essay. And in a way, Miss Mylan was kind of mean, and I don't think I would be quite as aggressive to my students, but it felt kind of special that she was reading my essay to all the rest. And Miss Mylan was on yearbook staff in high school, and I figured out how to write the captions for pictures that would make her laugh. And it was such a wonderful thing to write something that somebody else would laugh at. And I'd say Miss Mylan probably inspired me more than any other teacher. But and I guess I have to say my mom too. That my mom was a reader. My mom always took an interest in our education. She'd read the same books we were reading in school. She'd watch cartoons with me and listen to me talk. She'd read my comics that I made, and she'd be complimentary. So I always got a lot of support from my mom. And my dad too, but mom was more direct and hands-on.
So my next question is, when you were going through either becoming an instructor or trying to get into the anime district, were there any challenges you came across?
A severe lack of talent was the problem with my art, that, and two, patience, that I really feel like not only did I lack talent, but I wasn't willing to put in the time necessary. One thing I think a lot about is my wife homeschooled our kids, and one thing people would say a lot, like, I don't have the patience to do that, and that always kind of made her mad, because I think essentially we all have the patience, we just don't exercise it. And I really feel like there's part of me that thinks that I could have worked harder to develop my art skills, but it was really partly my own laziness, my lack of willingness to do it. But I don't know. I think that held me back. I really don't think that the whole idea of inspiration, the idea of innate talent, I think some people are more talented and have more gifts than others, but I really think I could have gone further with that than I did. So, did that answer what you asked?
Yes, it
Okay.
did. So was there any moment that you saw a student who was struggling and you felt proud of them because they accomplished something?
All the time. That's the best thing. That, I mean, every semester there are people that, they might not make it, but they work hard, and they do. That I think one of the best things about working at a community college that when I was in grad school, and then after I taught in high school for a year, I spent a couple of years teaching part-time at ASU, and it felt like a lot of those kids came in really well prepared, and it was almost a foregone conclusion that if they were willing to do the work, it felt like that a lot of times their resistance was they were away from home for the first time and didn't really feel like doing work, or they got. I mean, I had lots of students there that maybe they caught up in a party scene, but teaching at the community college level, yeah, I have students all the time that while they're in the class, they face incredible life challenges, and it is inspiring that they stick with it. Or, folks that struggle at first. English 111, a lot of times the first essays people write, the first things they write, they're obviously struggling, and to see how far they come by the end. A lot of students I end up having in English 111, English 112, and then at American Lit. And when I write reference letters to these folks, a lot of times I'll go back and look at the things they've written for each class, and to see how much they develop in a year and a half, that's kind of amazing.
Yes.
Have you always been good at writing?
Yeah. I've always enjoyed it. I don't know that I was necessarily good. I mean, I've always, to tell you the truth, I went to a private Christian school, kindergarten through halfway through 5th grade, and I felt like a pretty average student. But my brother had some issues there. Halfway through 5th grade, we switched to public school, and I have a 5th grade teacher, Miss Steiner, when I go to Newmarket Elementary, and I receive all this praise, and they put me in AG classes, and before that, I felt like kind of an idiot. You know what I mean? I didn't feel particularly gifted, but yeah, once I switched to public schools, there were a lot of teachers that were very complimentary, and I always struggled in math. That was the hard thing, that I always did really well in English, and that always felt like that came natural. But one thing that was hard in middle school is there was me and there was another girl named Holly. They'd take us out of class to go to the AG English class, but then we'd have to leave the room because we were both terrible in math, and we went to like the struggling math class, so it's always that kind of balance things, I think.
Was there, so like when you wrote, was there like a specific thing you wrote about like all the time? Like, or even if it was like different each time, but it was still back to the same like topic, was there a certain topic you wrote about all the time, or was it different topics every time, or?
Not really. I mean, I guess when I was writing more, and I haven't written creatively in a little while now, but I guess what I enjoyed most was dialogue, like and character. that I'm really interested by characters communicating. It was always fun writing dialogue and writing interactions with characters. I think I struggled more when I was writing to come up with plots that were interesting. Like, I've looked back at the things that I wrote, and there are things about kind of characters hanging out and talking. That's kind of fun, but nothing really happened. And, you know, I've thought about that there was a point that I was, honestly, I wrote comic scripts for a little while. Probably kind of in between that year I taught high school and when I was teaching at ASU. And I wrote some scripts and sent out different places. And yeah, the dialogue was a lot of fun. I guess I've always been more interested in human interaction, the way people, and I don't know, the kind of humor that comes up in dialogue, not so much story. I look back at those stories and the characters just kind of stayed in one place and talked about things, which is not really very interesting if you're reading a comic book or watching a movie. So
That's interesting. Just to because it like intrigued me whenever you were talking about how like you would write, and I didn't know if it was different topics or not, but that's cool.
To be honest, I'm kind of similar to you. I also used to draw and make my own comics back in middle school, and also maybe just a few years ago. But I love doing that. I can relate with you. I did want to ask you, what was a time that you felt like your life wasn't going to plan?
That year I taught high school was tough. That was really hard. And that coincided, I was right out of college. My son was born the last semester I was in grad school. And definitely I wanted to provide for my family, and I didn't feel like what I was doing at the high school was that good. That was a hard time. That was definitely a time of struggle. I don't know. It definitely, there are times that are hard. I lost my dad in December of 2024, and it's been kind of a sorting out period since then, but yeah.
I was going to ask you, how do you overcome challenges when you're in like that slump?
Yeah. My wife is wonderful and supportive. That she's such a comfort. I think definitely prayer, I think it's easy when you're struggling to withdraw and want to be away from everybody. And I think you got to keep talking and you got to keep putting yourself out there during those times of struggle, that you don't want to just withdraw in yourself.
Never give up.
100%.
So you said that you have not written creatively in quite some time?
I became full-time at Caldwell. I taught part-time at Caldwell for a year and a half. I became full-time in January 2004. And really, honestly, one of the most discouraging time is I taught part-time at Caldwell for a year, and they didn't have any classes for me in the fall of 2003. And I thought, they hate me, and I went to school to be a community college teacher. I don't have work here. And during that time, I had a lot of downtime. I was writing a lot. And that's when I was sending out scripts places. And I do think during that time, I'm praying for direction. And it's like when there's someone that left the college right around Thanksgiving of that year. And I've written on and off since then, but honestly, and sometimes during the summer, I'll pick up and I'll write a little bit. But for the most part, I haven't really written anything that extensive or that creative since I became full-time.
Well, as one of the, and we've talked about this before, as one of your faithful and loving Facebook followers, you do write creatively regularly.
Well,
because
thank you.
those Facebook posts are, the highlight of my day whenever they do pop up.
Thank
so.
you.
So I think you are still writing creatively, but maybe not at the level that you would expect or like, but I think that release is still there for your creativity.
It is fun.
Yeah.
So on the topic of writing again, so like, would you rather? Cause you said that like you like to read too, but so would you rather like read papers since you teach English? Would you rather like read what students wrote to get insight of like their stories, as you mentioned earlier, or would you rather write creative stories?
I'm going to answer that very honestly. That a couple years ago, I had the opportunity to teach a creative writing class, and I thought I would really love that. But it honestly felt more awkward than it did fun, and I thought I don't really know how to respond to their stories. That I felt a little at sea. That I think I do enjoy the stuff that I have them write in my classes more. That it's just getting their thoughts on, I don't know, I really like hearing people, like nonfiction, just the stories of their lives. And I really like seeing how people think about issues, how they process things. That teaching, I don't know, I've had fun writing creatively. I don't know how to respond when people show me their own creative writing. So,
Is there someone that's supported you all the way?
yeah, so many people. I mean, honestly, I think about my mom and dad. That I was blessed with really wonderful parents, and I remember, like doing drawings, from them. They hang them up, and they just always made me feel like I was special, and they always made me feel good about it. They were always just constant support. My parents were wonderful. My wife, Jennifer, has just always been wonderful. That she's my best friend. People have always been so nice to me. Yes. And I don't, my family picks at me about it. My brother will say, everybody likes Matt, but I do feel humbled by how many kind people that I've met in my life, and I have received a lot of kindness. And
so, what would you consider your greatest accomplishment?
I mean, my kids, I am so proud of both of my kids. My son is a children and teens librarian in Watauga at the Watauga County Library. My daughter is a social worker out in Brunswick County, close to Wilmington. It feels. You can come to school and you can act like a nice person and people like you. It's harder. You're on all the time as a parent. And I don't know, you can put on that nice face with the rest of the world, but you're on all the time as a parent. And I don't think it's not like every decision we made was perfect. I certainly said things to the kids at times I wish I hadn't, but it's such a wonderful feeling just that I was part of their lives, and they're just the remarkable people they are. And just, you think about just so many wonderful memories with them growing up. And I don't want to rush them, but I'm really excited that one day I'll have grandkids, that my son's married. He got married in November, and my daughter Abby's got a pretty serious boyfriend, and I don't know. It's just, just having perspective is important. I really love teaching. I love the community college, but I mean, I think family's everything. That's what you put first, and yeah, I feel fortunate that.
That's so sweet.
Thank you.
So you've talked about how you've taught high school and then college, and then now you're teaching dual enrollment. How do you adapt to the change? Like the change of environment?
It really is just all about that you've got individuals in front of you, and you want to try to you want to be mindful that you're communicating with them in a respectful way, and that you're not speaking to them in a patronizing way. I'll say this. I don't want this to sound negative. I feel like the biggest challenge that I'm mindful now is it is frustrating. The longer you teach, and I've seen this in so many people, you feel frustration build up. And I've known people that have taught as they get towards retirement, they can be really negative, and maybe they can even talk to their students in a really condescending way, but they don't think their students are going to realize it. And what I don't want to do is I want to keep on trying to communicate with people authentically and meet them where they're at, finding common ground. That I don't want to be at the point where it's like I'm irritated with them all the time and I'm kind of talking hateful to them. So,
how do you deal with students who use AI?
I can speak really negatively about this, and I feel like I'm talking about it a lot in my class. I mean, you've heard that,
yes,
and I'm trying not to, but I feel like, to be really honest, I feel like a major part of my whole adult life is I've been trying to teach communication. And AI offends me a lot of times because it replaces that human communication. And I don't want to be anti-technology or even really anti-AI, because there's a lot of cool things that AI does. And I've played with AI a great deal. And there are even, I don't know, I wrote... I had a situation that I wrote an email that I thought, well, this sounds kind of snotty. Can AI give me, I've used AI for some things, help me temp this down a little bit where it doesn't sound. But I guess what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to have more conversations with students. I'm trying to sit down with people individually. I feel like one thing I believe about writing is that you're trying to teach people a process. And a lot of times, if they're using AI, they're not really following a process so much as each little step they're plugging into ChatGPT, and they're coming up bits that it's not progressing. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I guess I think the conversations that I'm having right now are really different than the conversations I had just 2 or 3 years ago. I think math teachers eventually had to get used to calculators. And I think I tell my students I don't mind if they use citation generators. I do wonder how things as far as proofreading, grammar, I'm sure there were teachers 20 years ago that had issues with spell check and grammar check. I think we're going to have to adapt, and there's going to be a new normal. Some of those things I see make me uncomfortable now, but what really frustrates me, and I don't want to go on a whole negative jag, but I do have some students that it's clear what they do. They copy my questions, they paste it into ChatGPT, copy what ChatGPT says, paste it into a document, submit, and that makes my head want to explode. I think what I hope happens in the future is if there's part of a process that still allows the student to think and they're still expressing themselves, and the AI helps with that, that's not such a bad future. But what I really worry about I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I know professional people that use ChatGPT to write their emails, and that is horribly offensive to me. You know what I mean? I feel like, human communication, that if instead of talking to you right now, I let the computer talk for me, that feels offensive to me.
Yes, just a little, kind of. Yeah, I get what you mean. I'm just a little bit curious. Is it difficult teaching people online compared to in person? Like, do you have any what type of challenges come up?
I do think, by and large, you get to know seated students better. It's just more natural. But I have had a lot of online students that I've gotten close to over the years, and there are people that I feel a closeness to that I wouldn't recognize them on the street. The best thing about online is there's a purity to that. I had a really cool experience at graduation last year. That there was a student that I had in the online class that was just, she wrote incredible journals. It was American Lit, and, she had such insightful things to say. And the journals I have doing American Lit, they can be informal. She'd make little jokes. I met her at graduation, and I realized she was nonverbal. And it turned out she was married to one of my former students. That was fun. But I thought about that. I've had this whole relationship with this person, just the written word, and I couldn't have got to know her if it just being face to face. I mean, I hope that I don't make judgments about people based on their appearance, based on their communication style. But the best thing about online is all that stuff is to the side. I do think in online classes, I have a lot more cheaters in my online classes than I do my seated classes. The AI thing is a lot bigger problem in my online. And I think it is because your students in an online class don't necessarily realize you're a person and not just a bot. So,
what is the best advice you have for young people trying to figure out what they want to do in life?
I think I didn't like Frozen 2, that it was a disappointment. But I would say there's a song in Frozen 2 about the next right step. And there also, I think about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. There's a moment where Indy has to walk out on kind of bridge one step at a time. And I think that's really key. It's you're just constantly trying to do what's the next right thing to do. I think you try to have varied experiences. You look for opportunities. I think one thing I'm proud of when I started out here that I think everybody should do when they're starting a job is I would volunteer to do things that, like, to teach a new class I hadn't taught before, or to help with something that I haven't. I think you constantly want to make yourself more valuable and vary your experience set. You try not to let yourself be completely terrified of what's ahead, and just try to do the best you can each day. And
Last one question. This is the last question. How do you feel knowing that you bring people to a light atmosphere, you put a smile on their face every day, and you help out students grow their skills and all, help them develop into better writers? How does that make you feel?
It's humbling to be part of people's journey, and especially, I love living in Caldwell County. That I went right before Christmas. We went out to eat, and I saw a retiree from the college who had her niece, and I hadn't seen her niece in like 15 years. But apparently, her niece is working as a chaplain in a hospital right now, and her niece told her aunt that tell Matt Williams that I'm still using what he taught me. And that's a really cool thing that I don't know, you get really close to people, and then they kind of go out into the world, and you hear about a small percentage of them. later, but it's a really cool thing to be part of people on the way to big dreams.
That's very sweet. I'm very glad that we interviewed you. You're just not in a weird way, but I love you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you to Mr. Williams for joining us today. Today's episode was recorded on March 17th, 2026. This episode was produced by Sierra, and it was hosted by Alexis, Raylen, and Yarecsi. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.